I remember the day I finally realized I was caught in a toxic relationship loop. Every interaction left me feeling drained, doubting myself, and somehow always apologizing, even when I'd done nothing wrong. The worst part, I couldn't see it clearly until I was already in deep. That moment of clarity didn't come from reading a self-help book or watching a YouTube video like this one. It came from an ancient philosophy that's been helping people navigate difficult relationships for over 2,000 years. And that's what I want to share with you today. Welcome to this video on identifying and dealing with toxic people in your life through the lens of Stoic philosophy. If you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that consistently makes you feel worse rather than better, or if you find yourself walking on eggshells around certain people, this video is for you. Perhaps you're dealing with a critical parent who nothing is ever good enough for, a friend who subtly puts you down, a manipulative partner, or a boss who takes credit for your work while blaming you for their mistakes. The truth is, we all encounter toxic people throughout our lives. The question isn't whether we'll meet them, it's how we'll respond when we do. And this is where Stoicism offers us powerful insights and practical tools. Now, I'm not talking about becoming emotionlessly stoic with a lowercase s. That's a common misconception. Stoicism, with a capital S, is a philosophical tradition founded in Athens around 300 BCE that offers profound wisdom about living well, particularly in difficult circumstances with difficult people. At its core, Stoicism teaches us that while we cannot control external events or other people's actions, we always maintain control over our judgments, responses, and inner state. This principle alone is revolutionary when dealing with toxic individuals who seem determined to provoke emotional reactions from us. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to identify truly toxic people versus those who are merely difficult, recognize unhealthy relationship patterns, establish proper boundaries, and respond to toxicity in ways that preserve your well-being. You'll learn practical Stoic techniques for managing your emotions during challenging interactions and gain clarity on when to work on improving a relationship versus when it's time to walk away. So whether you're currently entangled with toxic individuals or simply want to be prepared for when you inevitably encounter them, these time-tested Stoic principles will equip you with the mental framework and practical tools you need. Let's begin. Before we can effectively address toxic people in our lives, we need to understand what toxicity actually is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. The Stoics would remind us that accurate perception must precede effective action. Toxic behavior isn't simply someone being occasionally difficult, disagreeable, or having a bad day. We all have our moments. Rather, toxicity refers to consistent patterns of behavior that undermine your well-being, violate reasonable boundaries, and create persistent negative impacts on your mental and emotional health. From a Stoic perspective, other people's behaviors are external to us. They fall into what the Stoics called the category of things not up to us. The Roman Stoic philosopher Epictetus opened his handbook, the Enchiridion, with this crucial distinction. Some things are within our control, while others are not. Within our control are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our control are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. This distinction is fundamental to handling toxic people effectively. We cannot control whether someone chooses to criticize us unfairly, manipulate situations, spread gossip, or behave disrespectfully. These actions belong to them. What we can control is how we interpret these behaviors, what meaning we assign to them, and how we choose to respond. The Stoics understood something profound about human relationships. Much of our suffering comes not directly from others' actions, but from our judgments about those actions. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Does this mean we should simply accept or endure toxic behavior? Absolutely not. The Stoics were not passive doormats. They were practical people who understood the importance of discernment and appropriate action. What Stoicism offers is a framework for responding to toxicity from a place of inner strength rather than reactive emotion. When dealing with toxic individuals, the Stoic approach helps us distinguish between what we can and cannot change. We cannot change another person's fundamental character or force them to treat us with respect, but we can change how we engage with them, the boundaries we establish, and whether we choose to keep them in our lives. This perspective is liberating because it shifts our focus from trying to control the uncontrollable, other people's behavior, to focusing on what is within our power, our judgments, choices, and actions. As we explore how to identify and deal with toxic people, keep this fundamental Stoic principle in mind. Focus on what you can control, accept what you cannot, and develop the wisdom to know the difference. Now, how do we identify toxic people in our lives? The Stoics would approach this question through objective observation rather than emotional reaction. The goal isn't to label others in a judgmental way, but to clearly see reality so we can make wise decisions about our relationships. Toxic individuals typically display certain consistent patterns of behavior. Let's explore some common types you might encounter. The manipulator uses tactics like guilt-tripping, gaslighting, or emotional blackmail to control others. They might twist your words, deny things they've said or done, or make you question your own perception of reality. As Epictetus advised, it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. Manipulators intentionally aim to disturb your judgment and perception. The constant critic finds fault with everything you do, nothing is ever good enough, and they're quick to point out your flaws while rarely offering genuine praise. Their criticism isn't constructive, it's designed to diminish you. Marcus Aurelius would remind us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Rather than becoming critical ourselves, we can choose to see this behavior for what it is, often a reflection of their own insecurities. The energy vampire consistently drains your emotional energy. After interacting with them, you feel exhausted, depleted, and sometimes anxious or depressed. They might dump their problems on you without reciprocity, turn every conversation into a crisis that you must solve, or require constant reassurance and attention. The narcissist displays an excessive focus on themselves, lacks empathy for others, and often feels entitled to special treatment. They might exploit your kindness, take credit for your work, or become hostile when they don't receive the admiration they feel they deserve. The Stoics would recognize this as a profound misunderstanding of what truly matters in life, virtue and character rather than external validation. The Jekyll and Hyde switches between being charming and being cruel, often leaving you confused and walking on eggshells. Their unpredictability keeps you in a state of anxious anticipation. As Seneca noted, the person who doesn't know what port they're sailing to finds no winds favorable. This inconsistency in behavior creates precisely that disorienting lack of direction in relationships. The envious underminer expresses resentment toward your successes or happiness, subtly sabotages your efforts, and might spread rumors or make disparaging comments behind your back. Epictetus would remind us that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The envious person hasn't learned this lesson, and thus constantly compares themselves to others. Warning signs that you're in a toxic relationship include: you consistently feel worse after interacting with this person. You find yourself apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You're always walking on eggshells, afraid of their reaction. Your accomplishments are minimized or turned into criticism. You feel you can't speak honestly around them. They rarely, if ever, take responsibility for their behavior. You're often subject to emotional outbursts or silent treatment. You feel manipulated or controlled. They violate your boundaries repeatedly. Your relationship feels unbalanced, with you giving much more than you receive. These toxic dynamics take a serious toll on your mental well-being. Research has shown that ongoing exposure to toxic relationships can increase stress hormones, contribute to anxiety and depression, lower self-esteem, and even affect physical health. The Stoics understood this relationship between mind and body well before modern science confirmed it. The Stoic practice of objective observation is particularly valuable here. As Epictetus advised, make it your habit to pay careful attention to how things act on your senses, and more particularly to distinguishing your impressions of them, so that you can say at any moment what exactly it is that's making its impression on your mind. This means developing the ability to step back from emotional reactions and observe patterns of behavior clearly. Instead of thinking, "I feel terrible around this person," the Stoic would note specific behaviors. This person regularly belittles my achievements, interrupts me when I'm speaking, and becomes angry when I disagree with them. This objective observation helps us respond from wisdom rather than raw emotion. It allows us to see toxic behavior for what it is, without minimizing it or catastrophizing it. Most importantly, it helps us distinguish between genuine toxicity and our own possibly unfair projections or misinterpretations. Now let's turn the Stoic lens of examination toward ourselves. While it's important to identify toxic behaviors in others, the Stoics would insist that we first examine our own contributions to relationship dynamics. As Marcus Aurelius advised, whenever you're about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most resembles the one I am about to criticize? This self-examination isn't about blaming yourself for others' bad behavior. It's about honest assessment of how we might be contributing to unhealthy patterns. Sometimes we unwittingly enable toxic behavior through our responses. Perhaps we fail to establish clear boundaries, react in ways that escalate conflict, or repeatedly place ourselves in harmful situations despite knowing better. The Stoic practice of examining our impressions is particularly valuable here. Epictetus taught his students to question their initial judgments. When you receive an impression of some pleasure, guard yourself against being carried away by it. Remind yourself that you love what you're pursuing, not the pleasure it brings. Ask yourself, will I later regret this? How will I feel about myself afterward? We might similarly examine our impressions of others. When we feel someone is being toxic, we can ask, is this an accurate perception, or am I misinterpreting their intentions? Am I bringing past wounds into this present situation? Are my expectations of this person reasonable? This examination sometimes reveals that what we perceive as toxic behavior might actually be a clash of different communication styles, cultural or generational differences in expressing care or concern, our own unreasonable expectations of others, a triggered response based on our past traumas or insecurities, a person who is themselves struggling with mental health issues. That said, self-examination should never become self-blame for others' genuinely harmful behaviors. The Stoics valued truth above all else, and sometimes the truth is that someone is indeed treating us poorly, regardless of our own behavior. Setting appropriate expectations is another crucial Stoic practice in relationships. Epictetus advised, remember that you are an actor in a play determined by the author. If he wants it short, it is short. If long, it is long. If he wants you to play a beggar, play even this part skillfully, or a cripple, or a public official, or a private citizen. What is yours is to play the assigned part well. To choose it belongs to another. While this might sound fatalistic, it actually contains profound wisdom about expectations. We cannot expect people to behave contrary to their nature. If someone has consistently shown themselves to be self-centered, manipulative, or cruel, it's unreasonable to expect them to suddenly become compassionate, honest, and kind. As Epictetus plainly stated, when dealing with anyone, remember that you are not dealing with a logical person, but with an animal possessing reason. This recognition of human irrationality helps us set realistic expectations. The Stoics would advise us to accept people as they are, not as we wish them to be. This doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment. It means making decisions based on who people have shown themselves to be, not on who we hope they might become. By examining our own role in relationships and setting appropriate expectations, we develop a clearer perspective on which relationships can be improved and which might need to be limited or ended. This self-knowledge forms the foundation for the practical strategies we'll explore next. Having understood the nature of toxic behavior and examined our own role in relationship dynamics, let's explore practical Stoic strategies for dealing with difficult people. These approaches are grounded in Stoic principles but are entirely practical for our modern context. Setting and maintaining healthy boundaries is perhaps the most crucial skill when dealing with toxic individuals. Boundaries are simply the rules or limits we establish to protect our well-being. From a Stoic perspective, boundaries are an expression of our values and a recognition of what is and isn't within our control. Seneca advised, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach. This suggests being selective about who we allow into our inner circle, based on whether the relationship is mutually beneficial. When setting boundaries with toxic people, be clear and specific about what behavior is and isn't acceptable. Communicate boundaries calmly and without apology. Focus on your needs rather than criticizing the other person. Use I statements. I need space when conversations become heated, rather than you always get too emotional. Be consistent in enforcing boundaries. Recognize that healthy people will respect your boundaries. Toxic people will often test and challenge them. The Stoic practice of negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, can help prepare us for difficult interactions. This involves imagining challenging scenarios beforehand to reduce their impact when they occur. Before meeting with someone who tends to provoke you, take a moment to envision likely triggers and plan your response. As Seneca wrote, the soul should know beforehand all the troubles it might have to face. It should work out its problems and decide how to meet them. Emotional regulation techniques are central to Stoicism and particularly valuable when dealing with toxic people. Remember that while we cannot control others' behavior, we always maintain control over our response. As Epictetus said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Practical techniques include the pause. When provoked, silently count to 10 before responding. This creates space between stimulus and response. Cognitive distancing. Observe your emotions without identifying with them. Instead of "I am angry," think "I notice feeling anger arising." Perspective taking. Consider the situation from the other person's viewpoint. What insecurities or past experiences might be driving their behavior? Value alignment. Ask yourself, how would my ideal self respond in this situation? Or, what response aligns with my core values? Naming emotions, simply identifying what you're feeling, "I'm feeling frustrated right now," can reduce emotional reactivity. Marcus Aurelius practiced a powerful mental exercise each morning. Say to yourself first thing in the morning, I shall meet with people who are meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, and unsociable. They are subject to these faults because of their ignorance of what is good and bad. This isn't pessimism. It's preparation that allows us to respond with compassion rather than surprise or anger when we encounter difficult behavior. Sometimes distancing yourself from toxic individuals is necessary. This might mean physical distance, limiting face-to-face interactions, emotional distance, restricting what personal information you share, communication distance, reducing the frequency and depth of communication. Social distance, avoiding group settings where they're present. The Stoics understood that sometimes separation is the wisest choice. As Seneca advised, associate with those who will make a better person of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for people learn while they teach. Developing resilience through Stoic practices helps us withstand the effects of toxic interactions when they're unavoidable. Resilience comes from focusing on virtue, maintaining your integrity regardless of how others behave. Practicing gratitude, appreciating the positive relationships in your life. Physical self-care, getting adequate sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Mental discipline, regular reflection, and philosophical study. Community support, surrounding yourself with healthy relationships to counterbalance toxic ones. The Stoic practice of the view from above helps gain perspective on interpersonal conflicts. This involves mentally stepping back and viewing the situation as if from a great height, seeing how small our conflicts appear in the grand scheme of things. Marcus Aurelius practiced this regularly. Think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you, and of destiny, of which yours is how small a part. This doesn't trivialize genuine harm, but it helps distinguish between what merely annoys us and what truly threatens our well-being. It reminds us that many toxic interactions that seem monumentally important in the moment will be forgotten in weeks or months. These practical strategies give us tools to maintain our equilibrium when dealing with difficult people. They allow us to respond rather than react, to make conscious choices rather than being driven by emotion. Most importantly, they help us maintain our own character and values even when facing those who seem determined to provoke us into abandoning them. But what about transforming toxic relationships? Is it possible to improve them, or is separation always the answer? The Stoics would approach this question pragmatically, focusing on what's within our control while accepting what isn't. Some relationships can indeed be transformed, particularly those where the toxic behavior stems from unconscious patterns rather than intentional harm. The person shows genuine willingness to reflect on their behavior. There's mutual commitment to improving the relationship. Both parties can communicate honestly about concerns. The core of the relationship contains positive elements worth preserving. In attempting transformation, clear communication is essential. This means expressing how specific behaviors affect you without attack or blame. For example, when you interrupt me during meetings, I feel disrespected and unable to contribute, rather than "you're always so rude and domineering." However, the Stoics would also counsel us to accept what cannot be changed. Not all relationships can or should be saved. As Epictetus reminds us, some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. We cannot control whether another person chooses to change their toxic behavior. We can only control our own responses, boundaries, and ultimate decisions about the relationship. The Stoic approach to letting go combines acceptance with action. It means acknowledging reality as it is, not as we wish it to be, while taking appropriate steps to protect our well-being. As Epictetus advised, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. This doesn't mean passive resignation to mistreatment. It means making clear-eyed decisions based on the evidence of people's behavior, rather than our hopes for who they might become. When it becomes necessary to end or severely limit a relationship, the Stoics would advise doing so without unnecessary drama or vindictiveness. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." We can choose to end relationships with dignity, clarity, and even compassion for the other person's limitations, while firmly protecting our own well-being. Rebuilding after toxic relationships takes time. The Stoics would encourage focusing on what you've learned and how you've grown through the challenge. Every difficult relationship teaches us something valuable about human nature, about our own boundaries and values, and about the qualities we truly want to cultivate in ourselves and seek in others. As we draw our discussion to a close, let's summarize the key Stoic principles for identifying and dealing with toxic people in your life. Focus on what you can control, your perceptions, judgments, and responses to others' behavior. Practice objective observation to distinguish between genuinely toxic patterns and mere differences or misunderstandings. Examine your own role in relationship dynamics without taking responsibility for others' harmful choices. Set clear, consistent boundaries based on your values and needs. Prepare for difficult interactions through negative visualization and emotional regulation techniques. Create appropriate distance when necessary, whether physical, emotional, or both. Accept people as they are, not as you wish them to be, and make decisions accordingly. Maintain your character and integrity regardless of how others behave. When ending relationships, do so with dignity rather than vengefulness. Use challenging relationships as opportunities for growth and greater self-understanding. The ancient Stoics understood profoundly that we cannot control other people's behavior, but we always maintain control over our response to it. As Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This Stoic perspective offers us a powerful framework for navigating relationships with difficult people. It steers us away from two common but unhelpful extremes: passive victimhood on one hand and aggressive confrontation on the other. Instead, it guides us toward a path of principled assertiveness, standing firm in our values while maintaining our emotional equilibrium. Remember that the ultimate goal isn't perfect relationships with perfect people. Such people don't exist, and we ourselves are imperfect too. Rather, the goal is to navigate all relationships, even difficult ones, in ways that align with our deepest values and contribute to our growth and well-being. In closing, I'll leave you with this thought from Marcus Aurelius. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him." May you apply these Stoic principles to build relationships that nurture rather than drain you, to set boundaries that protect your well-being, and to respond to toxicity with wisdom rather than reactive emotion. Thank you for watching.